breathing now. So further information, look at respiratory system, the individual article on Wikipedia. So the respiratory system consists of specific organs and structures used for gas exchange in animals and plants. The anatomy and physiology that make this happen varies greatly, depends on the size of the organism, the environment in which it lives, and its evolutionary history. Yes, in land animals, the respiratory surface is internalized as linings of the lungs. And gas exchange in the lungs occurs in millions of small air sacs. That's interesting. Millions of small air sacs. In mammals and reptiles, these are called alveoli. Let's see this again.
Alveoli.
Oh, alveoli. And in birds, they are known as atria.
Atria.
Yeah, atria. So alveoli and atria. These microscopic air sacs have a very rich blood supply, thus bringing the air into close contact with the blood. Yeah, so basically you're oxygenating the blood. So these air sacs communicate with the external environment via a system of airways or hollow tubes. Yeah, and of which the largest is the trachea. See this again?
Trachea.
Yeah, trachea or the windpipe, which branches in the middle of the chest into two or primary bronchi. See this?
Bronchi.
Or bronchi. Yeah, bronchi. These enter the lungs where they branch into progressively narrower secondary and tertiary or third bronchi that branch into numerous smaller tubes, the bronchioles. See this pronunciation?
Bronchioles.
Yeah, the bronchioles. Or bronchioles. In birds, the bronchioles are termed parabronchi. Let's see the pronunciation here.
Parabronch.
Yeah, so parabronchi, the computer just, I don't know why it does that sometimes. But anyway, so parabronchi, it is the bronchioles or parabronchi that generally open into the microscopic alveoli in mammals and atria in birds. Air has to be pumped from the environment into the alveoli or atria by the process of breathing, which involves the muscles of respiration. And let me just note, respiration is the movement of oxygen from the outside environment to the cells within tissues, and the removal of carbon dioxide in the opposite direction. So oxygen in, CO2 out. Breathing or ventilation is a process of moving air out and in the lungs to facilitate gas exchange with the internal environment, mostly to flush out carbon dioxide and bring in oxygen. In precise usage, the words breathing and ventilation are hyponyms. See the pronunciation here?
Hyponyms.
Yeah, hyponyms, not synonyms of respiration. But this, so this does not mean the same thing as respiration. Respiration is getting getting oxygen in and CO2 out. Breathing is getting air. Breathing is getting air out and in the lungs. So breathing out or breathing in air, and air has oxygen, so that's the mechanism of bringing oxygen in, and respiration is the actual intake of the oxygen. Let's continue further. So, in precise usage, the words breathing and ventilations are hyponyms, not synonyms of respiration or synonyms of respiration. But this prescription is not consistently followed, even by most healthcare providers. Because the term respiratory rate, RR, is a well-established term in healthcare, even though it would need to be consistently replaced with ventilation rate if the precise usage were to be followed. So that's respiratory rate. That's actually just the breathing rate. It's not the actual oxygen intake. Yeah, rate. So it's just to be very, very precise. That's interesting. So yes, respiration versus breathing and ventilation. So in common use, it's pretty much the same, but in specific use, you're not talking about the same stuff. All right, continue for this. So hyponymia, just see this word right here.
Hyponymy.
Oh, hyponymy from Greek. This one, hopo, under, and this right here, onyma. Oh, let's see the pronunciation here. Hupo, under, and this onyma. Onyma, name, is a semantic relation between a hyponym denoting a subtype and a hypernym or hyperonym or hyperonym.
Hyperonym
denoting a supertype. So a hyponym is a subtype of it. Yeah, so for example, if you have a hypernym, there's a hypernym right here is color, and then a hyponym is a subset of color, so purple, red, blue, green, and then you have a further hyponyms of purple would be crimson, violet, lavender, etc. And yeah, so this is our hyponym. So they are subsets. So breathing and ventilation is a subset of respiration. Yeah, so respiration is the movement of oxygen from the outside environment to within cells and removal of CO2. And then breathing is the process of moving air in and out, and this facilitates gas exchange, so facilitates respiration over there. Yes, interesting. Anyways, continue further. So the lungs are the primary organs of the respiratory system. We'll see the pronunciation again on this.
Respiratory.
Yeah, respiratory system in humans and most animals, including a few fish and some snails. So you have the respiratory system right here. You have, this is the diaphragm right there, and there's the lungs, left lung, right lung, and there's the bronchioles, that's super tiny setup over there. There's a bronchus, and you have the alveoli over here. Yeah, alveoli is those super tiny ones. This one is just the further branches out of the windpipe. There's the pharynx, that opening there. There's a larynx right here, and there's a trachea or trachea right here. Yeah, this is larynx. That's the sound box, I think. Yeah, so that's where it goes closes to move to make sure food doesn't go inside it, and that's also how you can do speech, etc., and facilitate how much air goes in and out for breathing and speech and so on. So, anyways, and there's a trachea or the windpipe goes all the way down, and there's the nose. There's a nasal conchia or conchae. There's a frontal sinus, and this is the back sinus right here, or this is the sphenoidal sinus, and there's a nasal cavity over there. Yeah, and just a note here on this nasal conchia. Let's just have a look at that in detail here. So in anatomy, a nasal concha, let's see the pronunciation.
Concha.
Or concha, or plural conchi.
Conchi.
Or conchi, also called nasal turbinate, or turbinate.
Turbinate or
turbinal.
Turbinal.
Yeah, turbinate. Yeah, let's see that again.
Turbinate or...
Yeah, turbinate or turbinal is a long, narrow, curled shelf of bone, that protrudes or sticks out into the breathing passage of the nose in humans and various animals. The conchi or the conchia, I'll see that again.
Conchi are...
The conchi are shaped like an elongated seashell, which gave their name, and this is Latin concha.
Concha.
Or concha from Greek, this word right here. A concha is any of the scrolled, spongy bones of the nasal passages in vertebrates. It's very interesting. So here is a close-up look. Nose and nasal cavities. There's a frontal sinus. So there's a middle nasal concha. Over there, there's the nasal concha. And there's an inferior nasal concha over there, the lower over there. It's the middle, the top. So yes, that's a very interesting shape of that bone there. And there's an external narus, that opening, a nasal pharynx. Oh, nasopharynx is pharynx near the nose there. Yeah, and this is the internal narus. This is the opening there. Yeah, and there's a sphenoid sinus, the nasal concha. Yeah, we already got over all these. So, anyways, basically a bunch of cavities over there, and some protruding bones for the nasal concha. Anyways, let's continue here. Here is a setup of this. Of the human lungs, and then how they are respective to the heart there. So the human lungs flank or are on the sides. The human lungs flank or on the sides of the heart and great vessels in the chest cavity. So you have it over here. Here's the left lung. There's the right lung there, and there is the heart right there in the middle, which is quite interesting. That's in the middle, but a bit more on the left side. So our right. The person's left there, and there is the great vessels over here, the different big giant passages for blood in and out to the body and to the lungs there. Very interesting. And they're very close to it. Again, so that you're going to need the alveoli or atria for birds full of blood to get as close as to the oxygen as possible to oxygenate it. Anyways. Let's take a look over here now. So this is conducting passages of the human respiratory system. So yeah, you have the upper respiratory tract, the nasal cavity, the pharynx right there, opening. Then there's the larynx, So the other one is the food pipe. That's the that is the food pipe or the esophagus. But now you have the larynx right here. That's for the lungs all the way down. There's a trachea. So that's the, you could view this as the upper respiratory tract or opening or path or set of organs. And now you have the lower respiratory tract, the trachea. You have the primary bronchi opening up. Now you have the lungs over here, and there's the branches inside. So conducting passages of the human respiratory system. The larynx, so this larynx right here, the larynx commonly called the voice box. Yeah, I was calling it sound box. So anyways, the voice box is an organ in the top of the neck involved in breathing, producing sound, and protecting the trachea against food aspiration or suction into airways.
Aspiration.
Yeah, aspiration or suction into the airways over here. So yeah, this can go up and down and closes it so that the food doesn't go in. So it goes to the esophagus, which is quite remarkable. Think about it. Animals are literally machines, bio machines. Alright, so let's continue further. Let's take a look at this figure right here. So the bronchi are conducting passages for air found in the lungs. So you have the trachea right here, the windpipe, and it splits up into the bronchi. That's plural, but singular is bronchus. So you have the primary left is the primary bronchus. The primary left bronchus is over here. This is the primary right bronchus. Yeah, and this is left because we're looking at the person. So our view is the right, but that person is the left there. And then this bronchus splits up into secondary bronchus, like this over here. And then you have tertiary, it keeps splitting up even more and more. And then even smaller ones called bronchioles. So yes, very fascinating. Yeah, then eventually it gets to the air sacs, the alveoli. Alright, let's continue further now. And now we're going to read up on some veins before I get over to the images right here. Basically, we're gonna take a look at, I just want to go through a detour right now, just because we're going to go through the types of veins and arteries involved in the lungs, but it's just a slight difference between the one we're used to. I'll just start reading up here. So the pulmonary veins are the veins that transfer oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. And a pulmonary artery is an artery in the pulmonary circulation, that's the circulation of the lungs to the heart, that carries deoxygenated blood from the right side of the heart to the lungs. So this is to the lungs there. But it's deoxygenated. The key thing is deoxygenated there, and this is oxygenated blood right here. And the reason for that is, well, veins are blood vessels in humans that most other animals, and most other animals that carry blood towards the heart. So it's defined as towards the heart. And most veins carry deoxygenated blood from tissues back to the heart. Exceptions are the pulmonary and umbilical veins. See the pronunciation here.
Umbilical vein.
Yeah, umbilical vein. So, both of which carry oxygenated blood to the heart. But in the case of the umbilical vein, this is to the heart of the child. So it's going to the fetus there. Yeah, so just to illustrate here. So, a pulmonary vein is from the lungs to the heart, but it's oxygenated. But most of the body ones is sending deoxygenated blood back to the tissues. And then artery right here, plural arteries. From Greek arteria or windpipe, windpipe artery is a blood vessel in humans and most other animals that takes blood away from the heart to one or more parts of the body, tissues, lungs, brains, etc. And most carry oxygenated blood, so most of them are oxygenated blood, but they're not defined that, they're defined as blood away from the heart. Yeah, so I'll just bold this right here. So away from the heart. Sure, we don't need to bold this one. So most of them are oxygenated blood from the heart to the body. But the two exceptions are the pulmonary, pulmonary. Let's see the pronunciation again. Whoops.
Pulmonary and
let's try that again, the pulmonary right here.
the pulmonary.
It's a pulmonary and the umbilical arteries, which carry deoxygenated blood to the organ. Yeah, to the organs that oxygenate it. Yeah, that is to the lungs and placenta, respectively. Yeah, so basically the arteries is taking blood away from the heart, and in most cases to the body, it's oxygenated blood that comes from the lungs. But then if you're sending blood to the lungs, that's deoxygenated blood. as well as if you're sending it to the placenta. We'll get to that. It's a placenta, otherwise via the umbilical arteries, or that's what those ones are called. So anyways, the umbilical vein is a vein present during fetal development that carries oxygenated blood from the placenta into the growing fetus. The growing fetus, and eventually we'll have a heart. The umbilical artery is a paired artery with one for each half of the body that is found in the abdominal and pelvic regions. In the fetus, it extends into the umbilical cord. The umbilical arteries supply deoxygenated blood from the fetus to the placenta. And although this blood is typically referred to as deoxygenated, it is important to note that this blood is fetal systemic arterial blood and will have the same amount of oxygen and nutrients as blood distributed to other fetal tissues, or mainly as that, which is an interesting side note here from Wikipedia. Anyways, let's take a look over here. This is the fetal circulation, and the umbilical vein is a large red vessel on the far left, and this is the red one over here. Remember, it's the vein, so it's going towards the heart. And so it goes from here, it loops around, etc., goes towards the heart. Notice the arrows there, and this is the heart of the child. It's the child. This isn't the mom there. This goes over to it, and then you could see that the umbilical arteries are purple and wrap around the umbilical vein there. So the artery is wrapped around it, and this takes from the body, or in this case, from the heart of the fetus, so just from the body of the fetus when the heart's not developed, and then it goes over to the placenta. And there's the placenta, this flat piece over there, and it wraps around the umbilical vein. It wraps around it, etc. And then there's two of those veins there that wrap around. Notice how there's two there. So it's a pair of the veins there. Pair of the arteries. So there's pairs like that. That's very, very fascinating stuff. And let's just continue further. And you also note in this figure it has the arrow for the artery going from the heart, or from the body of the fetus, and then to the placenta. All right. And now in placental mammals, the umbilical cord, also called the navel string, birth cord, or this funiculus umbilicus. See the pronunciation here.
Funiculus umbilicalis.
Funiculus umbilicalis is a conduit between the developing embryo of a between the developing embryo or fetus and the placenta. So this is the umbilical cord, goes and connects where the belly button is. And let's take a look. The placenta is a temporary fetal organ that plays critical roles in facilitating nutrient, gas, and waste exchange between the physically separate maternal and fetal circulations, and is an important endocrine organ producing hormones that regulate both maternal and fetal physiology during pregnancy. The placenta connects to the fetus via the umbilical cord. Let's take a look at this figure set up right here. So here's the placenta over there. So there's a placenta. It's basically the barrier between the body, or the connection point between the mom and the baby. There's the umbilical cord going all the way there. Has the red vein going towards the heart or towards the fetus, and then you have the blue the blue arteries going from the baby or the heart and then over to the placenta. It's very, very fascinating. Now here is a diagram over here. I'll just illustrate the process here. So fetal circulatory system includes 3 shunts, and shunt is a hole or passage allowing fluid to move from one body part, one part of the body to another. So there's holes or passages. So 3 shunts divert blood from undeveloped and partially functioning organs, as well as blood supply to and from the placenta. Let's continue further. Alright, so if we zoom in here, and what we have is, so we have the baby here, so there's a placenta zoomed in of it, and it's basically that flat slab there, this flat organ, with a bunch of microvessels there, of the arteries and veins connected, and there's a bunch of blood, etc. And then now you have this placenta, and now this is the umbilical cord, which contains the umbilical artery and umbilical vein. And the umbilical artery is, remember, artery is from the heart away. So heart, in this case, because the placenta is providing the oxygenated blood, the artery is the one that's deoxygenated, or more deoxygenated relative to the to the veins in this case. So these are the two pairs there to wrap around the umbilical vein in red. So the big umbilical vein goes over there. Now if you zoom in this part right here, we get blood arrives via the umbilical vein. Alright, so it goes up like this, etc. And now we have over this section here, it's supposed to go into the liver there, but the ductus venosus, this is a shunt. So here, the fetal circulatory system includes 3 shunts. So it has these right here. Let's just pronounce this one.
Ductus venosus.
Yeah, so the ductus venosus shunts or directs the blood away from this organ to this other one. Shunts oxygenated blood from the placenta away from the semi-functional liver, so semi-functional there, and then toward the heart, which is more important in this case. Yeah, or the developing heart center. And now if we zoom into the heart area, and yeah, notice this part right here. So it's the inferior vena cava, or inferior vena cava. Let's see the pronunciation soon. But this is all going up. That is, let's just read up on that right here. So the inferior vena cava, let's pronounce this.
The inferior vena cava.
Yeah, so the inferior vena cava is a large vein that carries the deoxygenated blood from the lower and middle body into the right atrium of the heart. This is a vein carries the deoxygenated blood. This is in general, but we're talking about the fetus getting oxygenated blood, not deoxygenated. In the case of the of the fetus getting it from the placenta. So this is going towards the heart. There's the right atrium. Let's just zoom into the atrium. And this atrium, let's read up on it. I have it actually written over here. So the human heart. We're looking at this one. The human heart has 2. Let's just zoom out. Yeah, the human heart has 4 chambers. 2 upper atria. That's plural for atria. Yeah, plural. Singular is atrium. The receiving chambers. So this receives the blood, and then has 2 lower ventricles. Let's see the pronunciation.
Ventricles.
Yeah, ventricles. The discharging chamber. So those are the ones where it discharges. So what we have is this is the inferior vena cava. It puts it into the right atrium, so that chamber there. And notice how it's right, but it's our left. But you're looking at the person's right atrium. So when you're looking at a person, it's always the mirror, and then the left one is here, our right. You're looking at the paper's right, then we're looking at the screen, but it's left. So that's the left atrium for the actual heart of the person. All right. So yeah, it's like looking in the mirror. And then those are the receiving chambers. This receives it from the body there. This receives it from this receives the this deoxygenated blood in the body, but oxygenated blood in the fetus. And then likewise, left atrium that receives the oxygenated from the lungs, but in the fetus that's deoxygenated blood from the body to it, and then going back to the placenta eventually. So anyways, and there's the ventricles right here, and there is the atriums. Okay, so the heart showing valves, arteries, veins, and the white arrows show the normal direction of blood flow. The normal one like this goes from here, then goes down here, as well as this goes down here, and then this ventricle goes up to the pulmonary artery. There's the pulmonary vein going to the heart, etc., going down here. And yeah, very, very fascinating. All right, let's keep scrolling up. So that is the inferior vena cava. So let's keep scrolling up. So now what we have is 1 oxygenated blood from the placenta. So now we're zooming into this heart area. So oxygenated blood from the placenta enters the right atrium via the inferior vena cava. So it goes in here, and there's the right atrium over here, and so just basically somewhere over there. And then then this is the foramen ovale. Let's see that's another shunt. This right here, this is number 2 there. This allows oxygenated blood in the right atrium to reach the left. So it goes from here, directs it over to the left one. Let's erase this. All right, so erase that, and let's read that foramen ovale. Oh, this is right here. So we can zoom out. So in the fetal heart, the foramen ovale, let's pronounce this one. It's just a shunt, actually. We don't actually need to. I'll just erase this. That's just repeating ourselves. So basically, it's written already here. So the foramen ovale, that's one of the 3 shunts of the fetal circulatory system. Let's read it.
Foramen ovale.
Yes, a foramen ovale. I've been calling it foramen ovale, but yeah, close enough. So foramen ovale. So that is the shunt that allows oxygenated blood in the right atrium to reach the left one over there. And then go 3, this ductus arteriosus, that's another shunt. That is over here, ductus arteriosus.
Ductus arteriosus.
Yeah, ductus arteriosus. That connects the aorta with the pulmonary artery. And we'll get to that aorta in a bit. And then further shunting blood away from the lungs and into the aorta. It gets it away from the lungs because the lungs are, they're not needed right now because it can't breathe. There's no air inside. The baby starts breathing once it's outside of the womb. The next step right here, this mixed blood travels to the head and back to the placenta via the aorta, or that's just the main artery. So going from the heart away and so on. And a whole bunch of other stuff there. It's fascinating. So let's just zoom out. Alright, so we're zoomed out and let's continue reading. And yeah, this part, we don't need to read that just because it's a shunt. So I want to try to minimize the amount of stuff that we need to go through. So that's just one of the shunts that directs, it basically directs a whole passage allowing fluid to move from one part of the body to another. And it's usually allowed to direct away from these other organs there. Anyways, going further, and yeah, there's the aorta there, and we'll read up on the aorta now. So this is the inferior vena cava from the bottom, there's the superior from the top there. Very interesting. There's the aortic valves, ventral or vitral valves, etc. And pulmonary valve, and this is the tricuspid valve, going from the right atrium to the right ventricle. Very fascinating. Anyway, so here's the aorta. See the pronunciation here.
Aorta.
Yeah, so the aorta is the main and largest artery in the human body, originating from the left ventricle of the heart and extending down to the abdomen, where it splits into two smaller arteries called the common iliac arteries.
Iliac
arteries. The aorta distributes oxygenated blood to all parts of the body through the systemic circulation. Yeah, to the body there. But in the fetus, it's the other way around. It's getting the deoxygenated blood away and back to the placenta. And yeah, so here's the aorta, and it starts from the left ventricle right here and goes through there. It's fascinating. Now let's continue further. Here's aorta segments, and here's how it looks like, and goes all the way to the abdomen. So there's the ascending aorta. There's a aortic arch. There's a descending thoracic aorta all the way down. And there's the suprarenal abdominal aorta, and then there's the abdominal. There's the thoracic side there, or thoracic cavity, the abdominal cavity there, and there's the infrarenal aorta, just different segments of it. Schematic view of the aorta and its segments. And here's some other branches of it. So the aorta branches right common carotid, and there's the the right subclavian. This is the one that's going up. It's the right. Let's see, the right common. This one here is this. Now you have the right subclavian. And then there's the brachio. This part right here, brachiocephalic. And yeah, apologies if I pronounce any of them wrong, but we could zoom in here. And there's the left. This right here is the left subclavian. There's the left common carotid over there. And yeah, this is the right common one. Then there's the right and left coronary arteries, or part of the aorta branch, and it's all coming from the heart. And there's the celiac trunk, superior mesenteric, and there's the renal. Remember, renal is meaning kidneys. Yeah, it's usually meaning kidneys. Is the gonadal to the gonads, inferior mesenteric, and then there's a common iliac. Split over there. So it goes from one, splits over there. And branches of the aorta. Alright, so let's continue further. I'm going to look at that earlier figure again, but just a different figure, just to provide different, just a different perspective, or just different image to illustrate this a bit better. So that image is more text. This one has a better illustration right here, just to illustrate it. So this figure is from stanfordchildrens.org. So here's fetal circulation. So here's the placenta connected to the mother. And then what you have is there's the vein, there's umbilical cord, and the umbilical vein in red. And then there's the umbilical arteries, etc., going over here and back to the wrapping around the umbilical vein. So the red is oxygen-rich blood. And then you have this blue is oxygen-poor blood that's coming back to the body. But you also have a mixed blood in purple. And this mixed blood in purple is, that's where this umbilical arteries, they still have some of that mixed blood there because it gets mixed in the heart system there. So what you have is the vein goes in here, and then there's the liver, but then you have the ductus venosus to get it back, to direct it to the to this vein there, or directed to this vena cava, so that the inferior vena cava, and then so it can go to the right atrium, and there's the pulmonary arteries over there that goes over from the heart to the lungs, but then it also gets directed back around here, because the lungs are not a function. In fact, they're filled with fluid, which is pretty interesting. So anyways, and then there's the foramen ovale right over there, and this allows it from the right atrium to the left, and so on. And then just want to illustrate, so you have in the heart area, you have a bunch of mixed blood coming from the different parts of the body, but then as well as coming from the placenta right there directly into the right atrium. It's very, very fascinating. There's the kidney, etc. Anyways, continue further. And here's another illustration as well. So again, there's from the placenta, you have the umbilical vein going here. There's the liver, there's the ductus venosus, and then goes through right into this inferior vena cava, straight over here. And there's the foramen ovale to get from the right atrium to the left side there. And there's the ductus arteriosus over here to connect these two setups there. Yeah, that's to connect this left pulmonary artery or this artery into this aorta. And then, so notice the purple there is mixed blood. It's mixed from oxygenated and deoxygenated. And yeah, you have a full oxygenated right here, but then there's a superior vena cava going down here, and that's the deoxygenated from the rest of the body, etc. And I just wanted to illustrate these two diagrams there, which is quite interesting. Anyways, now I'm going to go over this diagram. I just want to make a note of it soon, but basically we have an animated schematic of the hearts and circulatory systems of a fetus and its mother. Red and blue represent oxygenated and deoxygenated blood respectively, and there's an animation of it. But note that this diagram does not provide detail regarding the umbilical cord and the 3 shunts that bypass the non-functioning / developing organs such as the liver and lungs, etc. So you have the mother right here. There's a pulmonary vein. So there's the lungs. So it's the part where you're breathing in air. And then you connect the air to the through the bronchi all the way down into the air sacs, or the alveoli, and that is a high concentration of blood. Brings it in contact with the air, absorbs that O2, and then it goes through the pulmonary vein towards the heart. Yes, it goes towards the heart, and yes, it goes into the left atrium, but as well as the right atrium. It basically has that opening there that has a bit of a mixture there. We can go scroll back up to the heart illustration, just a regular heart, not the fetus heart. So if you have it here, and actually in this case you're going to dump it in. So dump it in from the veins right into the right atrium. But here we're looking at the pulmonary vein. So that'll be from here going in. Yes, you have some connections over there. Left atrium over there. So in this case it goes left atrium, goes to the left ventricle, then goes to the aorta, then out through everywhere, and then goes back into the right atrium versus as deoxygenated blood. So that's a general look over there. Alright, so it's a general one. Let's just keep scrolling back over here. So you have the general one, pulmonary vein over here. It goes to the left atrium. Then the left atrium goes, there's a mitral valve, goes to the left ventricle. Then there's an aortic valve, it goes to the aorta. Then it goes to the rest of the body, and as well as the placenta. But then it goes back to this vena cava, or that is the vena cava for singular. So that's the plural, because you have the superior and inferior. So the vena cava, let's pronounce this.
Veni cava.
Veni cava from the Latin for, quote, hollow veins, or singular is vena cava.
Vena cava.
Are 2 large veins, the great vessels that return deoxygenated blood from the body into the heart. In humans, they are the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, and both empty into the right atrium. So that goes into the right atrium over there, and this goes to the tricuspid valve, then to the right ventricle, and then there's a pulmonary valve back to the lungs, and then they dispense of CO2. So deoxygenated blood, oxygen's gone, you have the CO2 there, and you get that, and you exhale, breathe that out from your lungs. All right, and now the next setup here is so this the reason I wanted to show this illustration, just because even though it's missing some details, it's just to show you that it goes from the mom, and then there's the rest of the body, but as well as the placenta. So it oxygenates it to get the aorta right to the placenta. It fills it up with oxygenated blood, and then now you have the setup here: pulmonary vein, but also the umbilical cord, the umbilical vein that connects straight into the vena cava, and then goes into the atrium. The right atrium, and this pulmonary vein goes to left atrium, etc. So you have a bunch of shunts there. So you would go into this one, and then you have the shunt going into the left atrium. So remember, yeah, you go directly to here, and then directly to here, as well as there's the pulmonary artery and aorta connection with the other shunt. So yes, that's the three shunts there, which is quite interesting. Actually, this shunt would be right here. Actually, these right here. Yeah, so it'd be interesting how that would look like. But anyways, this one just copies and pastes the same other one to the fetus one. But I just wanted to illustrate that idea there. So then the general one goes over here, and then the rest of the body, and then back here. But then you also have some bunch of shunts that go straight to here, and then this goes to here, and you also have it from this to here. Yeah, and there's a lot of intermixing going on. So it's more intermixed than the other one there, and there's an animation there. Let's just take a look at it. And this is from Wikipedia, so hopefully they clarify or simplify or clarify or add detail to this diagram. It's a bit off. This is from the actually I go over here placenta page. If you click this or the animation, and what happens is you get this right here, and you can zoom in and have a look at it. Yeah, so basically what happens is the O2 goes in. And then, this goes in here. These gets bigger, and it goes down, etc. There's O2 going in here. This gets bigger, and but there should be a bunch of shunts and going in. Yeah, so basically, it's a pretty interesting setup. Yeah, that's why I wanted to show it. It's a very interesting setup. But anyways, going further, so now we have back to the alveoli. So I want to go through all that. It wasn't initially included in there, but the veins / the pulmonary veins / pulmonary arteries, and then going to the placenta setup was just interesting to read up on. Alright, so here is the blood circulation around alveoli. So you have those air sacs, those microscopic air sacs. There's millions of them. It's quite fascinating if you think about it. So you have these microscopic air sacs, and now you have a bunch of these blood vessels around them. So here's a blood circulation. Notice, this part right here. Notice this one's red, so that's oxygenated blood. And what happens there, because this is the oxygenated blood is getting it from the lungs right here. So the air goes inside here, and then it goes inside here, and then the body brings in blood. So that's air, and then blood through this deoxygenated one. This is coming from the heart. So this would be the artery, because it's coming from the heart. And this one's the pulmonary arteries, and that's deoxygenated. And then it goes over here, it connects with the air, and then the super thin membranes, allow for the capture of the oxygen, and then they go into, then it becomes back to the heart via the veins, but this one's going to be oxygenated, so the pulmonary veins going back in there, so it's quite fascinating stuff there. Yeah, and then you have these microscopic microvessels there, or blood vessels, microscopic vessels, blood vessels all there, and then they connect over to the bigger ones, the bigger pulmonary pulmonary veins back to the heart, and the pulmonary arteries to the from the heart. Very interesting. All right, now here's another image right here as alveolar sacs. See the pronunciation here.
Alveolar sac.
Yeah, so the alveolar sacs and capillaries. This is small blood vessels. Yeah, and those are all interlinked around them. Which is quite interesting. So there's how the sacs look like as an animation there. Yeah, so the air goes in, and then these sacs over here. There's other little hole openings inside going into the sacs, and then all the capillaries, the small blood vessels, allow for the capture of that oxygen, and then which sends it back over to this red one right here. So that's the pulmonary veins. And then this blue one that's deoxygenated, that's from the heart coming over here, and then it gets the oxygen, goes back over here, etc. then back towards the towards the heart. Yeah, so those would be the veins. The red ones are the pulmonary veins. All right, very interesting. And now here's another setup right here, just to illustrate it, and just to see it where it is with the full body then. So anatomy of the respiratory system, showing the trachea and both lungs and their lobes and airways. Lymph nodes and the diaphragm are also shown. Oxygen is inhaled into the lungs and passes through the thin membranes of the alveoli and into the bloodstream. See inset over there. All right, so here's what we have. So there's lymph node, there's a trachea, or the windpipe, and there's the two lungs, and they have the upper lobe. These are just connected. So basically, this is the lung. That's the right lung, and this is the upper lobe. There's just a section here that you want to categorize this. So that's called out the upper one. And then you have this mid lobe over here, and then you have this bottom part right here. Just call that a lower lobe there. Again, there's no actual line there. There's just basically how you specify which part of the lobe you're looking at. Just one way of doing that. So anyways, there's a bronchi right here. So this is the trachea. Then you have the bronchi or the bronchus, or the right bronchus, left bronchus, or the bronchi in plural. And then it splits up. There's a diaphragm. This is the barrier right here, below the rib cage and below the lungs, etc. And we'll get to that in a bit. Basically, now if you zoom in right here, so this is the left lung right there. There's the lower lobe right there. Is the upper lobe. The upper, and I think there should be a middle one as well. But anyways, so now you have this lower lobe. If you look at a section there, there is this inset, or this zooming in portion. And then so you have the artery is the blue one, deoxygenated from the heart over here. Then you have the oxygenated vein, the pulmonary veins, coming from the air sacs right here, the alveoli. And there's the bronchiole, the smaller branches of the bronchi. This keeps branches out, secondary, tertiary, etc. And then all the way to the bronchioles, connected to the alveoli. So yes, fascinating stuff. Anyways, let's continue further. Oh yeah, so if we continue further now, if we look at here, we're going to go over the muscles of respiration, and we'll have to go all the way back to see where this was mentioned, just for the breathing. So I'm going to scroll all the way up, and we are, we're way too high now. Okay, so it should be right over, yes, right here. So remember, air has to be pumped from the environment into the alveoli, or atria for birds, by the process of breathing, which involves the muscles of respiration. All right, so now we can go all the way there. Let's just do muscles of respiration. Just to quickly go there. So we jump there. So right over here. Those are quicker than scrolling. So anyways, the muscles of respiration are those muscles that contribute to inhalation and exhalation, or breathing in and breathing out, by aiding in the expansion and contraction of the thoracic cavity. See the pronunciation here?
Thoracic cavity.
Yeah, thoracic cavity, which is a chamber protected by the rib cage, the diaphragm, and to a lesser extent the intercostal muscles. See the pronunciation here?
Intercostal.
Yeah, intercostal muscles drive respiration through quiet breathing. So that's the quiet breathing, but then the big one is the diaphragm. The elasticity of these muscles is crucial to the health of the respiratory system and to maximize its functional capabilities. So there's the diaphragm right here, helps in breathing, or that is what pretty much drives breathing. See, the thoracic cavity or chest cavity is a chamber of the body of vertebrates that is protected by the thoracic wall or rib cage and associated skin, muscle, and fascia. See the pronunciation here?
Fascia.
Or fascia. So fascia is right here. A fascia from Latin, meaning band, is a band or sheet of connective tissue, primarily collagen, beneath the skin that attaches to, stabilizes, encloses, and separates muscles and other internal organs. And here, if we just quickly read up on collagen, so we already went up earlier. So collagen is the main structural protein in the extracellular matrix found in the body's various connective tissues. There's a protein over there. So let's go back now. Collagen, and yes, always back here. All right, so we went over that. So connective tissue, etc. So, or band or sheet of connective tissue as part of the rib cage and associated skin, muscle, and fascia. So yeah, it's protected by the thoracic wall. And going further, this is the thoracic cavity there. And this is the expansion and contraction of the thoracic cavity. Now here, if you scroll up here, so remember the thoracic cavity is just over here. And yeah, so that is the thoracic cavity there. And it's protected by the rib cage. And the skin and fascia, etc. And let's continue further. Yeah, skin, muscle, yeah, and so rib cage, the bone, and then associated skin, muscle, and fascia. And protected by the thoracic wall, which is all these together. So, anyways, the thoracic diaphragm, or simply diaphragm from ancient Greek for partition. Let's see. Actually, I think I had a typo right here. It's actually partition. So it's my typo. So partition or this is or separation. Yeah, you're parting ways, or partitioning to separate objects and into separate objects. So let's just take a pronunciation here. Let's see this. Whoops, right here.
Partition is a
all right, so partition. So from ancient Greek for partition is a sheet of internal skeletal muscle in humans and other mammals that extends across the bottom of the thoracic cavity. The diaphragm separates the thoracic cavity containing the heart and lungs from the abdominal cavity and performs an important function in respiration. As the diaphragm contracts, the volume of the thoracic cavity increases, creating a negative pressure there, which draws air into the lungs. And then opposite is when it expands, and then basically you have increased pressure, so the air gets out. And the intercostal muscles right here. So the diaphragm, and to a lesser extent the intercostal muscles, drive respiration during quiet breathing. The intercostal muscles are many different groups of muscles that run between the ribs and help form and move the chest wall. The intercostal muscles are mainly involved in the mechanical aspect of breathing by helping expand and shrink the size of the chest cavity. Yes, you can use the muscles and then for quiet breathing as opposed to just big inhalation, exhalation via the diaphragm. So anyways, here's the body cavities right here. Let's take a scroll over here. So there's the body cavities. I think we've gone over this earlier. Basically, there's a cranial cavity, or this is the dorsal or backside cavity. And then it's a part of that is cranial, the brain. Then you have the spinal cord. Then there's the thoracic cavity right there, separated by the diaphragm. And this is called the ventral or the front cavity. When you combine them both, there's the abdominal cavity. There's the abdominopelvic cavity. It includes the pelvic cavity over there. So yes, very, very interesting. Now here is the setup right here for intercostal muscles highlighted in dark red. So these are the intercostal muscles. So there's the ribs right there. There's intercostal muscles around it. There's a diaphragm at the bottom right here. And yeah, it's very, very interesting setup there. So those are these thick banded muscles there. And if you scroll up, so are many different groups of muscles that run between the ribs and help form and move the chest wall. So you could use these and contract and expand, etc. for a secondary setup of breathing, as opposed to the main one using just the diaphragm right there. Anyways, here's an internal muscle left, the side abs. And this is looking also at the this is the intercostal right there. So this was the intercostal from this view from inside. If you go look at it from the side abs or from the internal oblique muscle left, right here. Yeah, this shows right here. So there's the ribs right there. And there's the intercostal externus, intercostal internus muscles inside there. Notice how they're various shapes. There's some over. There's some extending out like this. There's some inside, etc. Anyways, that's pretty fascinating stuff there. Just erase this and continue further. Alright, so now let's take a look at the respiratory system in a bird. So it has the atria as opposed to the alveoli. But anyway, so we have respiratory system in a bird. You have this paranasal sinus, those cavities there. Then you have this paratympantic sinus on this side. There's a trachea, the windpipe. There's the cervical air sac. And then you have the humeral divectorylum of the clavicular air sac. All right, a bigger air sac there. And then, so you have it like this. And then you have this is a clavicular clavicular air sac and more air sacs. Basically, air goes in here, and then you have the anterior thoracic air sac, and then posterior thoracic air sac over here. That's the anterior or the front, and there's the back. And then there's the abdominal air sac there. There's the lung there. So this is a very interesting setup. So you got wind coming here, there's the lung, and then you have these other big air sacs. Alright, so MES note right here, a sinus is a sac or cavity in an organ or tissue or an abnormal cavity or passage caused by the destruction of tissue. So yeah, basically a cavity there, the paranasal sinus there. There's another one over here, peritonitic sinus. Yeah, I'm not going to go over every single one of these, but let's look at the paranasal sinuses right here. See how this was pronounced.
Sinuses are...
They're sinuses. So paranasal sinuses are a group of 4 paired air-filled sacs that surround the nasal cavity. I believe this is just in humans. Let's put this here. Just do in humans. Yeah, just because we're talking about birds. But this one is in humans as a 4-1. There's no consensus regarding the physiological functions of the paranasal sinuses. The most likely include decrease in the relative mass of the anterior or front sections of the skull, increased voice resonance, etc. And one known function of the paranasal sinuses is the production of nitric oxide or nitric oxide. See the pronunciation?
nitric oxide.
Yeah, nitric oxide, which also functions as a facilitator of oxygen uptake. And yeah, here's a note here. This nitric oxide is a colorless gas, formula NO. And yes, which also functions as facilitator of oxygen uptake in the paranasal sinuses. Paranasal sinuses occur in many other animals, including most mammals, birds, non-avian dinosaurs, and crocodilians. The bones occupied by sinuses are quite variable in these other species. Yeah, so in this one here, the paranasal sinus over there, that's set up. Here in humans, remember, it's 4 paired cavities. So paranasal sinuses are a group of 4 air-filled spaces. So 4, that would be 8 then. Yeah, 4 times 2. So here's the paranasal sinuses seen in a frontal view. The frontal sinus, there's the pair, and then the sphenoid sinus over here, and then you have the ethmoid air cells, those cavities there. Then there's the maxillary sinus over at the bottom over there. All right, let's continue further. So here, this is a source from Britannica.com. Note that the lungs of birds do not inflate and deflate, but rather retain a constant volume. Also, the lungs are unidirectionally ventilated rather than having a tidal, or let's see the pronunciation here.
Tidal.
Yeah, tidal bidirectional flow, like in and out, and going inwards and outwards, as in other vertebrates with lungs. So yeah, birds lack, now we're back to Wikipedia here. So birds lack a diaphragm and therefore use their intercostal and abdominal muscles to expand and contract their thoraco-abdominal cavities, thus rhythmically changing the volumes of their air sacs in unison. Here's an illustration below. So here is a illustration here, inhalation and exhalation cycle in birds. So if we zoom in here and move this, so in inhalation, so the lungs remain the same constant volume, so they don't expand, etc., and they're also going to be one direction. So we have the trachea, so air goes through here, there's a trachea, and then what happens is, or the windpipe, then it goes through the bronchus right here, and then you have the parabronchi, which is parallel bronchus or parallel bronchi over there, like, yeah, basically in a parallel form, and it's unidirectional. So it only can go one direction, and that is in this direction. So it can only cycle this way. So it doesn't go back through, it does not go backwards, and it does not go this way, it only goes the other way. Alright, so in inhalation, what happens is, so the muscles around it relax, so then this air goes through, opens up, then these posterior air sac gets bigger. So this expands, and then this brings in all the air. Yes, it's relaxed, and then this goes through as well. Now you have the breathing part, goes through here, It also goes through here, and the air sac also expands, so it's sucking in air. That's inhalation. So it's breathing in air. And then the exhalation, what happens is the muscles contract, so it wants to push the air out of the air sac. So there's an anterior air sac at the front, and then you have the posterior, or there's a top, is the bottom. And then the posterior one right here, the muscles contract, so pushing the air out, and the air still cycles across like this way. But notice here, as it's breathing in, this is blocked off, so the air is just going all through that. And then let's just scroll here. Yeah, back over here. And then in this case, when you're exhaling, what happens is this is blocked off there. So then all the air goes through around here or through this, and then this gets pushed out. So that's open, and you're exhaling there. Yeah, which is quite amazing, actually. So and then pushes it all outside. Anyways, going back here's another diagram. So this is a cross-current respiratory gas exchanger in the lungs of birds. Air is forced from the air sacs unidirectionally, so from the right to the left in a diaphragm, through the parabronchi. Yeah, and then what you have is the pulmonary capillaries, or the small blood vessels, surround the parabronchi in the manner shown in the manner shown right here. Blood flowing from below the parabronchus to above in the diagram. Yeah, so what you have is the heart will pump the arterial blood, which is deoxygenated, over to here. Yes, this is and this is always in one direction. So there's a parabronchus right here in the middle, right there. Yeah, so what you'll have is so the blood pumps into the artery there, and then the pulmonary, and then you have it over here. Then you have atmospheric air from air sacs going in here, and then when it gets to when this pulmonary artery gets inside, this oxygenates it. And then this takes it over to the pulmonary to pulmonary veins back to the heart, and to the back to the heart, then to the rest of the body after that. So notice how the exchange happens. Yeah, so basically, and notice how it's decreasingly oxygenated. So the first ones get oxygenated more, and then less and less, etc. This all goes to the heart, and this eventually gets exhaled outward, and we can see that over here. So notice as they go through here. And then they get, then basically, and then the veins go through back to the heart. So then all the ones that are surrounded by them, they're surrounded by the capillaries, so the pulmonary arteries and veins, and then eventually gets exhaled all the way back out, like that. All right, fascinating stuff. And then going over here, so blood or air with a high oxygen content is shown in red, and then oxygen poor air or blood is shown in various shades of purple and blue. All right, yes, very interesting. So continue further. So avian lungs do not have alveoli as mammalian lungs do. Instead, they contain millions of narrow passages called parabronchi, connecting the dorsobronchi to the ventral bronchi. This is the back, all the way to the front one at either ends of the lungs. So you have the front. This is the back side. So this is connecting the dorso. So dorso is the back, and then the ventro is the front. So it connects the bottom right here to the top one, and you have millions of these. Whenever you see this diagram, it shows a few, but we're talking millions of these in the lungs. Yeah, so connecting the dorsobronchi to the ventral bronchi at either ends of the lungs. Air flows anteriorly, or caudal to cranial, so from the bottom to the top, and then through the parallel bronchi. So if air flows anterior through the parallel bronchi. Anterior is through the caudal to the cranial, so going upwards. From this bottom right here to the top. And now here, if we just zoom over back to the anatomical directional reference, the caudal is from Latin caudum, or tail. So we have, just to scroll up. Okay, it's freezing up anyways. So just remember this chart again. So the anterior or ventral, that's the front. And then the caudal to the cranial is up top there, like that. And so anterior is going at the top, or cranial, and so on. And what else do we have? Dorsal is the back, or posterior. All right, let's get back here. Also, yeah, this was actually earlier in the video. So in birds, the bronchioles are termed parabronchi. It is the bronchioles or parabronchi that generally open into the microscopic alveoli in mammals and atria in birds. All right, let's continue further here. So parabronchi and go all the way over to them. So we're back over here now. All right. All right, so we're here. So we connecting the dorsobronches or the back to the ventral or the front, or at either ends of the lungs. So air flows anteriorly, caudal to the cranial, so the tail to the top, to the brain area. So basically from bottom to top, through the parallel parabronchi. These parabronchi. Let's see if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Parabronchi.
Yeah, parabronchi have honeycombed walls. The cells of the honeycomb are dead end air vesicles called atria, which project radially from the parabronchi. The atria are the site of gas exchange by simple diffusion. So just the pressure. The concentration of one is too high, goes over to here. So gas exchange, namely oxygen from the air into the blood. The blood flow around the parabronchi and their atria forms a cross-current gas exchange. See diagram above. See diagram above there. So it's a cross diagram like that. It goes there. So that is how the blood flows around the parabronchus. That's very interesting. And now here's a diagram here. This is figure from FlandersHealth.us. So a schematic diagram of a parabronchus showing its various component parts and the geometric relationships between the airflow and blood flow. And so there's the atrial muscle around. There's honeycomb shape over there, and there's the atrium inside there, like that. So that's those air sacs, yeah, or air vesicles, or these dead end air vesicles called atria, and then which project radially from the parabronchi, and there's the site of gas exchange by simple diffusion. So there's the parabronchial lumen. Is the clearest photo I could find in the few moments of research I was doing here. But anyways, so yeah, I searched it up, and this is pretty much best I can find so far. So look at the honeycomb shape there. There's the lumen on the inside of the parabronchi, and there's atrium around it on this parabronchi there. And there's the gas exchange occurs over here, and the intrabronchial venule, and then there's the interbronchial vein, etc., and then artery and arteriole. These are the small veins. Oh. And then the small arteries that connect over to the capillaries, or that branch out from the veins and branch out from the artery. Just very fascinating. So these ones surround so the blood vessels surround the parabronchi, and then you have the connection point here, the venule, and then you'll have the inside there, as well as the arteriole connected over there, and then you have a whole bunch of capillaries, and this is the site of the gas exchange where you have the atrium, the dead end air vesicle. All air gets stuck in here, then connects to the capillaries over to the veins, back to the heart, etc. So quite fascinating. So you have so this is the vein, and then you have artery. So vein, artery, pretty much like that around. So veins, arteries, interchanging, etc. Yeah, but not necessarily perfectly symmetric interchanging, but actually I would assume it's something like that. But yeah, because this is in this diagram it has 2, 2, 2, 2. So it could very well be. That's pretty amazing.